Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Shakun Mahajan, Assistant Professor in the Department of English, Padma Shri Padma Sachdeva, Government PG College for Women, Gandhinagar, Jammu. My topic is related with science fiction, and the title is The Beginning of Proto Science Fiction An Analysis of the Blazing World by Margaret Cavendish. The Blazing World as a literary work defies all the literary traditions of the 17th century. Cavendish created this utopian fiction and moved beyond the boundaries of reason and compartmentalized standards. Through the blazing world, she shows that women can be as creative and capable as male writers and calls for abandoning the masculine restrictions. As utopian and science fiction, the novel can be seen as feminist pesto. It is written for the female readers and has women as central characters. The Empress and the Duchess, discussing topics like science, governance, and philosophy in fantastical setting. The description of the new world, called the Blazing World, is often considered a forerunner to the honors of both science fiction and utopian novels. It is satirical in tone and can also be seen as a treatise on nature philosophy. The work is divided into two parts and delineated different genres like romantical, philosophical, and fancy or fantastical. Science fiction was used by Margaret Cavendish to highlight negative, both present and potential aspect of a time. The Blazing World binds to Cavendish's philosophical reflections, highlighting how her criticism of the mechanistic approach and the experimental scientific method has important political and epistemological consequences, even for the contemporary feminist debate on science and knowledge. It is somewhat fascinating to note that women writer Margaret Cavendish, the Duchess of Newcastle, is the first prolific writer in the field of science fiction who explored feminine power in the 17th century. She was an English philosopher, poet, scientist, fiction writer, and playwright. Being related to royalists, she spent some of English Civil War in France. She wrote in her own name in a period when most women writers remained anonymous. She was born in 1623 to an aristocratic royal family in Colchester, Essex. She was privately educated in childhood, but appears to have read wisely on a range of topics more usually reserved for male writers. She was a natural philosopher at a time when women were not formally educated. As a young woman, Cavendish traveled with Charles I's wife, denying he had secretly authored her works, as some detractors insisted. Cavendish openly acknowledged her husband as an important influence upon her work. Now, the question that the relation between the power and the scientific knowledge is to show how that science could be allied to female power only, if radically thought. It can be rethought also. This novel explores the scientific knowledge being objective. Female are only radically that the truth has the expression of a particular point of view. The blazing world binds to Cavendish's philosophical reflection, highlighting how her criticism of the mechanistic approach and the experimental scientific method has important political and epistemological consequences even for the contemporary feminist debate on science and knowledge. Although science fiction defined and long dominated by men, but it has a particular affinity with feminism. The impact of feminism on the field can be observed throughout the history. Women have existed not only in science fiction texts themselves, but also on the development of feminist approaches to science fiction criticism. A number of women managed to read and enjoy science themes of science fiction stories of excellence. Not only these have been female readers, fans, writers, but few female science fiction characters have protested against the inequalities explored which have been explored the universe, fought by the sides of their man and accompanied male protagonists to alien planets in proto-science feminism. In the galaxy of women writers, female science authors created utopia, fantasy, as well as dystopia, which guarantees women's status and their rightful place in the society. The imagined civilization, feminism, utopian, the kingdoms of heaven have cropped here and there and have laid foundations of proto-science fiction and proto-science feminism. Proto-science fiction existed in the form of fantastical premises of one sort or another, often including miracle, mystery, and mythical imagery in the early days. Women writers shaped their ideas about female utopia, utopian society, and attempted to conceptualize social science fiction in history itself. They explored alternative possibilities for changing roles of women and roles for women. They created a new private world exclusively for women, often included magical, religious, mythical imagery, allegory, or events, and so many other things. Some of the prominent women writers created history in proto science, feminism, and Margaret Cavendish is one of them. Cavendish was largely ignored during her lifetime and forgotten until major feminist writers rediscovered her writings in the 20th century. Today, she is receiving more and more scholarly attention. She explains in her author's note she published The Fanciful Blazing World alongside her more rigorous observations upon experimental philosophy in order to show how fiction can help writers and readers alike explore philosophical ideas and enjoy themselves. At the beginning of the blazing world, uh, lustful merchant kidnaps a young lady, hoping to marry her, but as punishment to gods, blow the merchant's ship toward the north, where the lady's world meets another pole of another world. The merchant and his crew freezes to death, but the lady survive. She finds herself in another world called the Blazing World, and the title itself gets justified here, which is full of curious hybrid creatures who have the bodies of animals but walk, talk, and act like human beings. The bearmen who live near the blazing worlds lay North Pole find the merchant ship and rescue the lady. She is as unusual to the blazing world's inhabitants as they are to her. So they bring her to their emperor, who lives in a palace in the gold and jewel studded as they are to her, our jewel studded city of the paradise. The emperor believes the lady to be a goddess, and he graciously marries her and gives her absolute power to rule and govern all the world as she pleases. The blazing world is one of the feminine utopian examples, including gender, power, manners, natural philosophy, and scientific world. Cavendish created his utopian fiction by mixing natural science philosophy and fantastic elements. The heroine gets vast knowledge of the universe and its beings and shows that she was a somewhat knowledgeable kind of woman. She received several intelligences from several experts of natural science. She incorporates and extends its spirit fully into the subject, including the things as causes of disease, especially uh, plague, atomic theory, microscopes by which shapes are enlarged, generating gold from tin, lead, brass, iron, silver for artificial transmutation, primitive ingredients of natural bodies, the principles of all natural bodies, the four elements fire, air, water, earth, amongst many others. Feminine power is an inspiring spiritual figure and has helped in her attempts. They are able to conquer the homeland and support one another. The two women figures, like one united body, want to show how administration of the real world should be. The Empress unleashes women's scientific power, arranges learned conferences, speculates on the science of blazing world, forms an intellectual hypothesis. Cavendish describes the world and its inhabitants, the priests and the governors, as the princes of imperial blood. Ordinary people are of different complexions, but their complexion is nothing like humans. Moreover, the inhabitants are of different sorts, shapes, figures, and so on. The Empress proceeds to assign each of the different types of men different occupations and different obligations. For instance, bear men become experimental philosophers, the spider and the lice men becomes mathematicians, the satyrs are the Galenic physicians, the flyworm and fishmen become politicians, and so on. She investigates various aspects of this strange world. While explaining the customs of this world, Cavendish says that all the inhabitants follow only one religion and worship God. Her curiosity leads her to discover a special arrangement in which women are not allowed to gather at a place of devotion along with men. The reason is that it hinders men's devotion and all their concentration is diverted towards their mistress. Thus, women pray at home. She also learns why priests and governors are eunuchs. In this utopian world, every person holding a powerful position has to be a eunuch to avoid the distractions created by women and children. Cavendish explores many fascinating concepts throughout the text concerning the natural world, both at macro level of the astrology and micro level, where she seems to be striving to articulate a concept of subatomic physics. She says that both by her own contemplation and the observations which she has made by her rational and sensitive perception upon nature and her works, she finds that nature is but one infinite, self moving body, which by virtue of its self emotion is divided into infinite parts, which parts, being restless, undergo perpetual changes and transmutations by their infinite compositions and divisions. In the novel, there is a frequent assistance upon the formation of one's own imaginative world as a means of escape in a way. Cavendish must have felt, uh, she must have felt that either bored or suffocated uh, by the actual life she was trapped within. Cavendish, much older husband, experienced varying amounts of financial and political trouble. Women have made contributions to science fiction from the earliest times to all civilization. They have been part of science fiction through the long line of women writers before Frankenstein and beyond Frankenstein. The proto science fiction and the proto science feminism uh, existed in the form of utopia and fantastical premises of one sort or another, often including miracle, mystery, and mythical imagery in the early days. The imagined future, societies, gender issues, feminine challenges, and utopian science cropped up here and there earlier than Mary Shelley, to whom we consider the first woman writer in science fiction. Historians with an interest in gender and science have illuminated the proto science fiction and feminism, uh, women's scientific attitudes, future female work, and her role in the society in the chronological order. The proto-science feminism has been recorded in Middle Ages. Christine de Pizan lived from 1364 to 1430. She was Franco-Italian writer, often claimed to be the first woman lead feminist foundation through her feminist foundation through her feminist utopia. Margaret Cavendish, 1666, the first English woman, wrote exclusively about physics, that is, nature science, and attempted to heighten the female science and serves as a platform for women's participation in hard science fiction. Before her, female science was a neglected area, and there was no woman member who was induced into the English Royal Society. In her works, she showed women were also masters of nature, science, and capable to work on scientific matters. She took part in some of the scientific debates in her times and presented the same in her significant work. And the description of New World 1665, that is also called The Blazing World. Cavendish visions of utopian science is unique and groundbreaking. She details a fictional new world where she herself is Empress. In fact, she encounters strange men, bear men, bird men, uh, even lice men. She explores the physical world and intelligently takes part in discussions, questions, and various uh, natural sciences, and such as why is the sun hot, how is snow made, and questions related to mysterious powers of nature are especially interesting. She showed the woman as a researcher in science and experimenter in natural philosophy. The novel A Blazing World celebrates a courageous woman in a strange world and presenting typical feminine science and changes people's ideas about the knowledge of women. Male scientists believed in their superiority, skills, and used the new science to spread that women were not capable in hard science world and boasted that they were the masters of nature. The blazing world and the philosophical world have been created through Cavendish uh, new science to spread that women were not that women are capable of uh, are capable in the field of science fiction. She did not use any brutal brutal force created through her labor involving pure reason and determination. Then, uh, like the conquerors like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, but killed only a few men, that too in the name of justice in the blazing world. The Empress lends her support to the Duchess' ambition. They are informed by the spirit about the infinite worlds and discuss the possibility of obtaining one of the worlds by the Duchess to create her own world in the field of science fiction. The Duchess happily rejects all other worlds while wholespreadedly agreeing to create her own world of her own choice. Cavendish says that she has fulfilled her desire of being an empress by becoming the authoress of the world that she created. She feels delighted and takes pride in the fact that she created a peaceful world as she chose peace over war, honesty over beauty, and reason over policy instead of following in the footsteps of heroic figures like Achilles, Hector, Caesar, Alexander, Ulysses, and so on. She declares herself the Empress of the philosophical world, as the blazing world already has an Empress who in her platonic friend, who is her platonic friend, she declares that she will never prove so unjust, treacherous, and unworthy to her as to disturb her government, much less to depose her from her imperial throne for the sake of any other, but rather choose to create another world for another friend. The character of the Empress possessed can be seen as a symbol of power that Cavendish wished the women of the English society are possessed. She always felt that women were never given their due and wholeheartedly believed that women could engage in politics and understand philosophy just as well as men. In the blazing world, she creates an idea. She creates an idea and she creates an ideal world that is starkly different from the real world. Her world is based on scientific research, understanding, and harmony with nature. Cavendish shows that women can be phenomenal rulers when power is given to them. She also shows that women can be as creative and capable as a male writer and calls for abandoning the masculine restriction. Science fiction is unique in literature not only because of its content, but also by virtue of its imagination, which it expresses. Science protofiction, science fiction is considered as a system, a small or neither much larger system, solar system, the machinery, the alien life, the universe of human life, etc. Science fiction is partly science and partly a novel. It is like science because it deals with the scientific world of view, and it is like a science because it deals with scientific world by the writer himself. Thus, it combines the interest of both science and fiction. The difference between an ordinary novel and the science fiction is that the ordinary novel deals with the contemporary social background or even with any other background, while the science fiction deals with a particular background in a galaxy of modern science. The science fiction author can use his imagination to invent things not always found in our world, but occur in the near future. The science fiction novum is the main device of any writer who creates a different world. A majority of science fiction stories are narrated by fusing probable and improbable incidents possible by an alternative world of science and technology. Thank you. Thank you so much.